Welcome to the Serve Locally portion of this series. There are two other sections in this series, one thinking about our worship to God and encouraging us to think creatively about what that looks like day to day. And the other section is thinking about how we love those around us with generosity and how that can really build the community that we live in. This section is all about how we follow Jesus' example in meeting the needs of those around us, and in particular, those who are suffering or disadvantaged or oppressed or simply don't know who Jesus is. This can be summed up with one word, and it's a word we don't really hear that often: serving. It basically means that we try and meet someone's need, we try and provide for or perhaps give to them in some way. And we're going to consider why and how we do this, as well as helping you to think what it means to serve locally in your context. But as usual, a totally unrelated question to get you thinking and talking as we start.
Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age.
It's hard to know where to start, isn't it? There is injustice everywhere, and sometimes that can feel totally overwhelming. Feels a bit like standing in my house when I know that every single room is untidy. I don't know where to start. And actually, even starting, I think there's very little to show for it. It's easy to procrastinate in those moments because actually no one would really notice if I'd started or if I hadn't. For this session, there are 3 things to remember. Number 1, we have been given the Holy Spirit and we are not called to do this alone. Number 2, it is already God's plan to see justice done. It's not our great idea and we're trying to convince God or persuade him to come along. We are already partnering with what he has already started. And number 3, we are all called to completely different things. Shortly, you're going to have a passage from Isaiah. This is an Old Testament book and it's written long before Jesus' time. Isaiah was a prophet, which means he could probably hear more clearly from God than other people around him at the time. And God was making him aware of all the broken things in the world. He was also pointing to ways that God would fix it. There's lots of harsh imagery in the book of Isaiah, and you can grasp some of the passion as you read bits of Isaiah. There's a fury against the evil, but there's also a tenderness towards those who are oppressed. And through this, you can grasp some of God's heart for it. You can grasp that he has not given up on his world or the brokenness. He's not procrastinating and feeling like it's all very hopeless to start. He has a plan. That plan has a name, and that name is Jesus. And it's through Jesus' example that we can carry out tiny bits of God's plan to see justice done. But we cannot do this in our own strength. Remember back to the first section and we talked about spending time learning from God. Well, now we renew our strength through spending time back again in God's presence. This means that we talk to God. So we ask him for help. We tell him about the things that we find awful. We keep talking to him. We might spend some time reading the Bible or listening to him or perhaps meeting with other Christians. These are all ways that we can persevere, even when it looks like we're not making any difference at all. It's also important, and it's in the Bible too, to take rests. Jesus took rests. He didn't work himself into the ground. He took time away to rest. So if you are working tirelessly for a cause, actually you're at risk of burning yourself out if you don't follow Jesus' example and take some breaks, take some rests. Remember that you are partnering with God. He can cope with you resting or slowing down a little bit. So if serving locally means truly local for you, or it might mean nationally or internationally, just remember that you are not doing this alone. You are partnering with God and you are acting in his strength. During this Serve Locally section, we're going to use our pause and pray time to listen to God mainly. Listening can take a little practice, and don't expect to hear an audible voice, although that isn't impossible. Instead, listen to the thoughts that come into your head after this time where you've asked God to speak to you. If your mind wanders, that's okay. Just come back to what we're thinking about and listen again. You might start to notice some similar thoughts that keep coming to mind, or you might get a bit excited thinking about the what-ifs around these thoughts. Sometimes you might think about a charity or a business or a person related to this cause. If so, at the end of this session, explore that a little bit more. A bit of Googling, perhaps contact somebody that you know. Basically push against that door and see if it opens and it leads you on. So how do we serve locally? We start personally, changed by God and prompted by Him to act. We make a choice to say yes to doing something, and we think about the things that move us. Now, these might be things on a local, a national, or an international level, but remembering that we are all called to different things and we contribute to God's bigger picture of seeing injustice end. But we always return to where we started, with God and in prayer. This is His plan, His vision, and it is only through His strength that we can persevere in action and in prayer.